Morning, guys. Still snowy here. Okay, so I said I was gonna make a video about something called the Benandanti. So this is pretty interesting. It might be long. I'll try to not go too slow here. So this is the insert from the book. This book that I have. I just wanted to show pink brain. Look at how pink that is. That's just. Anyway, I don't know what. It's headphones or something. Anyway, okay. So anyway, this is just from the insert here. Okay, here's the name of the book, Into the Unknown, from Reader's Digest. This is from 1981. Okay, here's the table of contents in case anybody is interested in any of this part here, any of this that I could look at or should look at. I mean, I have things that I want to look at here, but this book is pretty detailed. Come on. Okay, that's the other page, table of contents. Okay, so there's a bit in here about the Benandanti. Alright, so about the middle of the 16th century, the Benandanti, they were a group of men and women who performed a number of symbolic yearly battles against the forces of evil, demons, spirits, and such, usually to protect crops. Often they would go out at night in defense of the fertility of their fields. The Inquisition, however, began to question how true Christians might go out when they were supposed to be asleep, and how they might fight witches without, in turn, resorting to witchcraft. The result, according to somebody, Ginsburg, I can't read it, it doesn't matter, was that the Benandanti between 1620 and 1650 began to wonder too, and came to see themselves as a witch cult rather than as a protective fertility order. So this book has several pages long, about 4 pages long, goes really into detail how the accounts of Inquisition cases against these people, Benandanti, people who claim to be Benandanti, but I'm not going to go into that. Just suffice it to say that it was the Catholic Church that went after them. So I'll just read on. Perhaps the safest approach to an understanding of the identities of the witchcraft victims is that offered by Lucy Mayer in her book Witchcraft. In it, she suggested the existence of 6 broad categories of victims: the socially disadvantaged, the physically disadvantaged, the successful, those who would profit, personal enemies, and outsiders. So those are victims of the Inquisition. All certainly supplied victims to the Inquisition. So I'm sorry I have to do it this way. Yeah, probably get it twice now. Yeah. Okay. So just to go on, this part I'm just going to read a little bit about what was going on with the witches at that time. Although the witches might meet informally in covens, there were, according to the torture-engendered lore of witchcraft, 4 grand Sabbats a year. And those are the Sabbats that the Benandanti would go out and fight against them. And the order of occult and nefarious business was strict. First, there was the assembly itself, which the witchcraft expert Pierre, has described as a fair of merchants mingling together, angry and half-crazed, arriving from all quarters. A surging crowd of some 100,000 devotees of Satan. So this is going on in the 1600s. 100,000 is the quote from the Pope. Okay, so my thinking here is that the Pope, who was running the Inquisition at the time, may have well been understating this number. It's a little unclear what happened there, but I know that Ignatius Loyola, the person who founded the Jesuit order, was subjected to the Inquisition a couple of times, and then it seems that he was taken into the church, right? And now we have a pope who is a Jesuit, and it's evil. So I'm not sure of the dates here. As I said, it would be too much to go into the Inquisition part of it. But that's my thinking, that 100,000 was probably understated. Okay, so something was really going bad during this time. All right. Certainly an enormous assemblage in medieval times. So that's how I spelled medieval. That's how I spell it. That's what I remember. So I was struggling over this last night, so yeah. Especially since the largest attendance sworn to by a participant was 10,000. And most accounts, if they are to be believed, place it near 50 or 100. So, yeah, who, where, what accounts? This is just, bullshit here. Let's see. So it describes that a little bit, but that's not too important right here for us. Okay, so then there's the banquet. Let's see. So I'm just going to read the parts that are in quotes. One account says there are tables placed and drawn up, and they sit and start to eat of the food which the demon has provided, or which they themselves have brought. The menus consisted of such dishes as the flesh of young children, which they cook and make ready in the synagogue, as well as feasts, all foul in appearance and smell, so that they would easily nauseate the hungry stomach. So is spirit cooking, anybody? Early stories of Sabbaths had an additional inflammatory effect, one that would help ignite the persecutions to come. In 1484, so 200 years earlier, Pope Innocent VIII spoke out. He said, "It has recently come to our attention, not without bitter sorrow, that many persons of both sexes, unmindful of their own salvation and deviating from the Catholic faith, have abused themselves with devils, male and female, and by their incantations, spells, and conjurations, and other horrid charms, enormities, and offenses, destroy the fruit of the womb in women. As a result," so that's babies and abortions and things that they're doing to babies. I should enlarge this. Let's see. "As a result," the Pope announced, "our beloved sons," blah, 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 blah. Okay, that was all I wanted to read. Okay, so what's this last part? All right, so they're talking about the Black Death happened in 1348. Then the Inquisition, and then we're talking around the 1600s, these battles between these witches, and these good witches, the Benandantes, and these Satanists during their Sabbaths. So it's talking about after the Black Death. Okay. So I am thinking in terms of Agenda 21 here. But after the Black Death afflicted so many with no hope of a cure that it required nearly 2 centuries just to regain previous population levels. Wars were endemic. Simple survival hung in such precarious balance that a simple ruined harvest could condemn whole regions to starvation, which may explain why the calling down of hailstorms was considered among the witches' most heinous crimes. So that's messing with the weather. That's weather manipulation. So I just want to point that out because there's a little more, but with the Benandanti, read this here. They are related to the health of the crops and the fertility of the area. You know, they fight off the witches, you know, who prey on children, who attend Sabbaths in the hundreds of thousands, if not more, right? So here's how their battles go. Let's move up a little bit. Okay. The Benandanti were of peasant stock, poor and largely illiterate. They spoke almost exclusively the Friuli dialect, Italy, northern Italy, and at times had trouble communicating with their judges. However, several statements reappear throughout the entire length of Ginsburg's study. All Benandanti insist they were chosen by being born with a caul. Superstition ascribed an unusual destiny for children born with a caul, a piece of the amniotic sac on their head. This was true throughout Europe and even the Middle East. However, the specifics of the superstition, whether it was a good or bad omen, tended to vary from region to region. For several defendants in Ginsburg's study, the caul was a lifetime protective talisman worn in a pouch around the neck. It was the caul that identified a potential Benandanti to his or her recruiters. So, I don't know if I have this, but I think I do. Skip it. After the age of approximately 20, each Benandanti said another Benandanti came to them during the night and led them out, riding cocks of big, huge chickens. Real, it's just, yeah, huge, yeah. Or goats beyond the village and into the woods. On the way, the Benandanti would drink wine from their neighbors' casks, invisible and flying. So this is an astral battle that they did. All Benandanti insisted their bodies were left behind on their journeys. In the woods, the spirits of the Benandanti would meet the witches in the throes of their Sabbath. The witches would dance, fornicate, and defile Christian images. Sometimes the devil led them, at times, this should be LED, at times a warlock, the witches would serve either. The Benandanti would wait, led by a captain. Several separate trials record Benandanti from different villages describing the same leader, or led by a glowing angel, and then they would meet the witches in battle and beat them with flannel stocks. So the Wikipedia, it's different with the flannel. It's actually fennel for men and sorghum for women. If the witches won, evil triumphed. Crops withered, children and animals died. If the Benandanti won, good triumphed for a season. Fields were fertile, storms rare, children were healthy. Such rites happened 4 times a year, once before every season. Each Benandanti insisted to his inquisitor that they serve Jesus Christ and the church. One can see the trouble such statements would have given the inquisitor. Well, yeah, he's Catholic. So I'm not going to read all of this, just the first part. The Benandanti are by definition acting beyond the church, yet claim to be for the church. They witnessed the devil's Sabbath. You know, they claim to be for the people, is what they did. for the fighting for the people and protecting of the crops and the people and the children. They witness the devil's Sabbath, but do not partake. They know the witches in their region by sight, but do not reveal them. They act beyond the paradigm. As such, the inquisitors did not immediately reach for the rack and the fire. Now let's read some more of this. Initially, the Benandanti were released, and the same was true of the next batch of Benandanti arrested later in the 16th century. Each new generation of inquisitors seemed to inevitably run up against the Benandanti, interrogate, try and give up, handing out at best a sentence of mild heresy, punishable by paying penance and temporary banishment from the town or region. So which really wouldn't do any, if they really were do astral traveling or astral battling, how's that? That's not going to bother them. However, the attention the cult received led to its decline. So now it's a cult. The public became aware of the Benandanti's claim of their supposed power over the spells of the witches. So here's what happened. This is part of it. According to their testimony, the Benandanti can cajole and threaten witches into reversing their spells or hexes, particularly the ones that cause disease to children. So healing children. Inevitably, some unethical people who may or may not have been Benandanti began to charge the parents of sick children for the lifting of the witch's curse on their child. So when I read this, I thought, well, that's a precursor to doctors and modern medicine here. Look at that. On the one hand, this made the Benandanti, so the precursor doctors, claiming that they were Benandanti, and saying, pay me to heal your child. Seemed opportunistic. Well, it is. And devalued their goodness in the eyes of the populace. Yeah, because they're not serving Christ anymore. If they can heal children and they're taking money for it. All right. Leading to a more direct association between them and the witches they claim to oppose. Furthermore, the Benandanti's cure would more often than not involve the denunciation of the culprit, usually a family member, as the witch causing the trouble. All right. So at times the Benandanti would name a couple or even a dozen local women as witches and ascribe to them the most vile of acts. Yeah. The local inquisitors would be forced to investigate, if only to stop a lynch mob. Clearly, such provocations made the Benandanti seem like fanatics bent on disrupting the social order. All right? So, they didn't get persecuted too much. They got harassed, by the Inquisition. Some did get tortured, some. But it appears to me from what I read, and I don't know, if you want to look this up, or I don't know, I could take screenshots of this book, but anyway, I'll just to sum it up, it seems that they were harassed quite a bit by the Inquisition, but they weren't able, they didn't really try to destroy them, go after them. They went after a few of the leaders, ended up letting them go. So that makes me really curious. Why and eventually what brought them down is the trashing of their reputation, so with the population. So then of course they would be hunted and not trusted. So anyway, something to think about. little more on Wikipedia. I know this, but this is interesting. The visionary journeys. Although these were described by Benandanti as spirit journeys, they nevertheless stressed the reality of such experiences, believing that they were real occurrences. On Thursdays, between the Ember Days, periods of fasting for the Catholic Church, the Benandanti claimed their spirits would leave their bodies at night in the form of small animals. The spirits of the men would go to the fields to fight evil witches. These are the Malandanti, the practicing their Sabbath. The Benandanti men fought with fennel stalks, while the witches were armed with sorghum stalks. Sorghum was also used for witches' brooms, and the broom sorghum was one of the most current type of sorghum. If the men prevailed, the harvest would be plentiful. The female Benandanti performed other sacred tasks. When they left their bodies, they traveled to a great feast where they danced, ate, and drank with a procession of spirits. So there's that word again. I'm always seeing this word procession. Like every time I try to go to study some, it seems like. Animals, a procession of spirits, animals, and fairies, and learned who amongst the villagers would die in the next year. In one account, this feast was presided over by a woman, the abbess, who sat in splendor on the edge of a well. The earliest accounts of the Benandanti's journey, dating from 1575, did not contain any of the elements then associated with the diabolic witches' Sabbath. There was no worshipping of the devil, a figure who is not even present, no renunciation of Christianity, no trampling of crucifixes, and no defilement of sacraments. So what happened is eventually they just got their reputation trashed. They became the ones that were accused of doing all of the evil, bad deed stuff by the Inquisition, and it's like a police state where the population, they're going to finger you out because not because they really believe that you're evil, but because they're trying to protect their own families from the Catholic Church in that case. So anyway, there's a lot here. More. This was all in my book too. A lot of harassment going on, and all these different cases. Fairly complex attempts to bring down this group of people. So that's it. So there's a relation to the shamanistic tradition here. In the night battles, I can't remember reading this. I don't think this was what I wanted to. Yeah, I just wanted to point out that it was related to shamanism. Okay, so that's it mostly. The last thing I wanted to show you, because I got so curious about what's with the fennel for the men, and the sorghum with the women and the stalks, So I just found this with the fennel. So let's see here. Let's see. It repeatedly refers to the plant and mentions its purported ability to strengthen eyesight. Above the lower plants, 1842 poem from Longfellow. Above the lower plants it towers, the fennel with its yellow flowers, and in an earlier age than ours was gifted with the wondrous powers, lost vision to restore. So guys, maybe try some fennel. You want to restore your vision. Now, with the sorghum, like there's no culture link here. I could not find anything. But I did find there's a connection with sorghum and yeast as a natural yeast, which ties in with the women. Now, I did notice, this is kind of off topic, but Huffington Post says that, sorghum is gluten-free, non-GMO, nutrient-dense whole grain. well, great, but then like 3 entries down or 4, talk about, uh, you know, how they're replicating certain cultivars of sorghum using tissue culture. So that actually kind of sounds like GMO to me. So I don't know, but maybe the sorghum for the women. Just a thought there. So anyway, I'll put these links up. I love you guys. I don't know how long this video is. It's probably too long, but have a great day, and just take it easy. Try to relax, and God bless you.